Welcome to the second lecture on the startup method. In this lecture we're going to look at how great entrepreneurs find their ideas. Firstly, why are ideas important? Well, the first reason ideas are important is that a number of studies have shown that ideas are the key to building a successful business. And therefore, taking your time to ensure that you're starting a business with the right idea is time very, very well spent and would be equivalent to a 1,000-point activity. Second, great entrepreneurs are great at generating ideas. In this study done on 25 super innovators, which were compared to 3,000 executives, they found that the super innovators were almost twice as good at idea generation skills than non-innovators. Second, ideas are the best way to improve the sales of new products. So in this worldwide study on a number of companies, they looked at which process had the biggest impact on improving new product sales. And what they found is that companies that introduced an idea management process had a larger increase in sales than almost any other method. So technology and resource management didn't have a bigger impact on sales growth, neither did strategic planning or market intelligence. Idea management was the number one reason that new products increase sales. Also, ideas have been shown to be one of the best predictors of startup success. So in this study, what they did is they looked at all of the number of firm starts in the whole of America and compared them to the number of companies which became super successes. So Inc. 500 companies. What the Inc. 500 is a list of the fastest 500 growing companies in America every year. And what they found is that in the computer and office equipment industry, there were about 2,500 businesses that started. And 99 of those ended up becoming super successes. Compare this to the restaurant industry, where you had about 500,000 people starting businesses, but only 34 became super successes. So your probabilities in the two different industries or two different ideas is massively different. In the computer and office equipment industry, you have about 1 in 25 becoming super successful, where in the eating and drinking places, it's 1 in 15,000. So massive, massive difference. So it's all about the business idea. So then that leads us to the question, where do great business ideas come from? Well, the first place they come from is deep industry knowledge. So in this study, again, done on the Inc. 500 entrepreneurs, they found that 71% of these super successful entrepreneurs got their idea from previous work experience, more than any other place. Similarly, in this big study done in Europe on 1,800 businesses, they found that businesses which had industry experience or industry knowledge were twice as likely to in this study done on 1,800 entrepreneurs, they found that they compared businesses with no industry experience to businesses founded by entrepreneurs with industry experience. And what they found is that businesses with no industry experience had twice the failure rate, more than twice the failure rate of those without industry experience. As you can see, 54% of businesses with no industry experience failed over 5 years, where only 25% of businesses with industry experience failed. Also, in a study done in South Africa, done by Jose Barrera, a colleague of mine at the University of Pretoria, he looked at fast-growing businesses and compared them to no-growth businesses or declining businesses. And again found that the people who founded fast-growing businesses were far more likely to have industry experience than those without. So, in this course, you're going to be required to talk to a number of people within your industry experts, industry employees, competitors, industry bodies, to really develop your industry knowledge. And over this 10-week process, you're going to get the same knowledge of your industry that someone might spending 2 or 3 years working in the industry would get. The second way entrepreneurs generate great ideas is by lead users. So what is a lead user? A lead user is someone who uses a product or service, and 2, leads the market by developing products, prototypes, or modifying the product. So if you looked at an adoption life cycle, what you find is that lead users actually aren't early adopters of the product, but they actually make the product themselves or modify it, and before the product actually gets made. So they're the ones where you can go find out what they've done and actually get great ideas from them. So here's a video where we look at the example of the lead users around mountain bikes, a whole bunch of lead users who adapted the Swin bike to use it in the mountains, and you can see how they custom modified it, and many of these lead users ended up building multi-million-dollar biking businesses from being on the cutting edge of technology. Another example is this irrigation system, where I'm sure if you've driven past any farms you would have seen it. Initially it was a farmer who actually built the irrigation system for himself because he wanted to solve his problem of irrigating his crops. We also, in this slide, we look at the summary of studies done on users on product development, and what the study does is it compares the amount of lead users over here to the amount of manufacturers. So in this column over here, these are the number or percentage of people or innovations which came from the user, where over here this is the amount of innovation which came from the company which actually manufactures the product. And as you can see, a number of innovations actually come from users of the product as opposed to manufacturers of the product. What's interesting here is in scientific instrument, the first type actually 100% come from users of the product. So obviously it just shows that innovations actually do come from lead users. How common are lead users? So this is a summary of studies that looked at how common lead users are, and what they find is that in a number of studies, about between 10 and 40% of the people who use the product actually innovate or modify it for themselves. So in extreme sporting, we find it's almost 40% of people who use extreme sporting equipment actually modify the product for themselves. Mountain biking, it's about 20%. So usually in your industry, 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, worst case, of the people will actually be modifying the product. Now your job is to go and find these lead users and ask them or understand how they're modifying the product, so you can then take that innovation and commercialize it. So how do you find them? Well, the best way to do it is always look for expertise. So you interview a user of the product and then say, well, who do you think is a bigger expert than you? And you ask and ask and ask until you get to the best, the most knowledgeable person, and they're more likely to be lead users. So some of the questions you need to ask is, do they use the product or service? If they've added any features, or if they would like any features added, what would they like changed about the product? Did the product improve? Did they improve it? How did they improve it? How did they adapt it? The third way that great entrepreneurs get their ideas is by looking to solve problems. So one of the problems was that we all had many years ago was, how do we search the internet fast? And many businesses are looking at a cheap way to get to their customers. Obviously the reason Google was so successful is they provided a solution to those two big problems. Other examples is Pam Golding, a successful real estate company, solves the problem, I want to sell my house. Or Wayless, a company that helps people lose weight, solves the problem, I'm overweight. So what you need to do is, when you are speaking or interacting with customers, you've got to seek out problems that people will pay to have solved. The fourth way we find innovative entrepreneurs get their ideas is from networking. So in this study, again looking at the super innovators, what they found is that non-innovators are far less likely to get ideas from networking than innovative people like product innovators or corporate entrepreneurs or startup entrepreneurs. So in the one example, the founder of BlackBerry, Mike Lazarus, what he did is he actually got the idea for research in motion by interacting with a colleague, and a colleague of his said that the internet and being able to transfer data cheaply over the internet would be a huge idea, and that's what led to the idea of the BlackBerry. Similarly, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computers, got the idea for the Macintosh while networking with a bunch of researchers at Xerox Corporation, at the Palo Alto Research Corporation. So the idea for the mouse and the graphical user interface was actually not his, but he got it through networking with other people. So the process in this course, you're going to be doing a lot of networking. Obviously, you need to keep your eyes open for ideas from other people. The fifth way we find that entrepreneurs get ideas is from observing. So what we find is the main reason new products fail in a big product study done by Robert Cooper, one of the world's leading researchers on new products, is he found that inadequate understanding of the customer was the #1 reason that new products fail. So the one thing is that if we observe how customers behave, we can increase our understanding of the customer. So Paco Underhill is actually an anthropologist, and what he does is he runs a consulting agency where what they do is they just go and watch shoppers and try to understand what they do just by observing them as opposed to asking them what they do. And they've found a number of ways for retailers to increase their sales by looking at where shoppers walk, where they look for different products, and just by observing what they do, they can really increase the sales of those retail outlets. They've also found that, again, if you look at innovators, startup, corporate innovators, and product innovators, they are far more likely to have observing skills than non-innovators. So we need to really develop our observing skills. One of the famous examples of someone who has got a business idea from observing is Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit. He came up with the idea for Quicken and QuickBooks by watching his wife struggle to do her budgets and keep records, and thought, wow, it would be really cool if we could actually do this on a computer, and that led to the idea of Quicken. Similarly, Rajan Tata, a famous Indian entrepreneur, was driving in the traffic one day and looked out of his car, and it was raining, and he saw a family of 3 or 4 people on a scooter. He thought, gee whiz, isn't there a way that we could come up with a car that was really cheap? So what he did is he went to his engineers and defined a price and said, for the price of a scooter, we want to build a car. And the result was the Tata Nano, which initially sold for $2,000, about 18,000 Rand per car, and literally sold at the price of a scooter. But he got that idea from observing what was going on around him. So while you're interviewing and interacting with customers, you must observe what they're doing, and ideally even observe what they're doing with your product. So how do companies and entrepreneurs find their business ideas? Well, it's through 5 ways: deep industry knowledge, lead users, solving problems, networking, and observing.